Matt Higgins, welcome to the L3 Leadership Podcast. I'm especially excited about this one because it's always fun to jump on with a friend who I've known for quite some time. And I want to dive into what you do. But before, I briefly just want to share like a story of how we connected and just point out to everyone listening the power of creating content and the power of just connecting and partnering. And please fill in gaps where I have. But my understanding is that your assistant, Robin, who's the greatest ever, was randomly driving in a car one day and never had listened to a podcast in her life. And somehow it had to be God. I like literally my podcast popped up. She listens to it. It was on mental health and she ended up thought it was powerful, shared it with you. And then as a result of that, thought it was good. You invited me to come speak at a conference that you were running, which was, I told you, like the best run conference I've ever seen. Like every detail was thought out, world class. The speakers you had, like unbelievable. I was so glad I stayed for the whole thing. Yeah. And then we started talking. I said, hey, I have a conference that, you know, we fill a room, but the experience sucks compared to what you just showed me. Could we ever partner and make a difference together? And, you know, in 2024, we partnered together and did an L3 one-day conference in Pittsburgh. And again, you brought that same level of world-class execution to Pittsburgh, and man, people were blown away by it. And I just want to share that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this whole experience. But for me, it's like, man, if you are a content creator or put content out there, you never know who you're going to reach or what it'll lead to. So I want to encourage you to do that. And two, I tell people L3 one day all the time, like you're one connection away from changing your destiny and everything. And here we are now. It's been 2 or 3 years since we spoke, and we're still friends. And man, Lauren, I love your ministry and supporting it. And it's just an honor to call you a friend and have you here. I don't know if you want to share anything there, but it's just great to be with you.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here too, Doug. And of course, I echo the same thing, man. It's good to see you. Good to be on your podcast. And, you know, I'll just say for the listeners as well, just to piggyback on your connection is, you know, when Robin, my assistant, shared that podcast with me, you know, she shared it with me on a particular moment when she knew I needed it. And so, you know, I was going through some things myself, and I wasn't to the point that you were in your journey. But, you know, I was, well, I say that honestly.
I wasn't as bad as you, thank God.
Yeah. I know that looking back, I was getting there. And so, you know, I always tell folks when I'm talking about your podcast and talking about that interaction that we had was, you know, the things that you shared in your podcast helped me to learn lessons before some of those difficulties that you had to journey through were evident in my life. And so thank you, Doug, for just what you do here. And like you said, you never know. You're just doing a podcast. You don't know who it's going out to. I was just some random dude in Florida and caught the podcast at the right time. And God used it to really make an impact. And then the rest is history. Like you said, we hung out and did some stuff. And that's why I had you come to my conference the first time, because it was impactful to me. And I said, man, other people need to hear about this. And just, you know, how you were willing to very transparently share with what you were going through, which is something that we don't see a lot in leaders today. So anyways, appreciate you having me on the podcast today.
Yeah, well, and yeah, I think, you know, we just hit it off because we both have a passion for leadership, but we're not just running leadership companies and conferences on the sides. We both have full-time jobs helping lead organizations, and you're currently the CEO of Hope Children's Home. And man, it was amazing. I had never heard of children's homes before prior to meeting you, and getting to see the work you're doing there in Florida blew my mind. And as I said, Lauren, I love what you're doing. Can you tell people a little bit about what children's homes are, but more specifically what you do at Hope?
Sure. At Hope Children's Home, you know, our mission is, simply put, is to love children in need. And so we're founded in 1968. So for, you know, well over 57 years, we've just found children that through no fault of their own, you know, we're not talking about juvenile delinquents. And I'm glad that there's places that help children that have gotten off on a wrong path. But the children that we help are really a product of poor decisions of their parents. And so we do a lot with our families with drugs and alcohol, incarcerations, homelessness, and all of those things where the children, you know, just, I say it this way, they're good kids that come from bad situations. And so we bring them in here and we just simply love them and equip them for the future and whatever that looks like, as well as providing assistance to the families so that, you know, hopefully our goal is to get that family back together so that they can, you know, be a family that whatever circumstances has prevented them from being. And so that's what we do on a daily basis. There's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, that's what our nonprofit does.
Yeah. So the ultimate goal is reconciliation and to get them healthy again. I'm curious, like, can you walk people through like what that actually looks like on campus? Because seeing your campus and actually seeing the model of how you guys do that when people come in is amazing.
Yeah. Well, there's really, I would say, four pillars to our mission statement. So if we have our mission statement as the foundation, there's really four things that support that mission statement. And it's, of course, meeting their physical needs. Well, we have three different campuses. We have our Tampa campus, one in New Mexico, and then down in the country of Honduras. And so we care for about 100 children at any given time. And if you can imagine, Doug, you have 5 kids, I have 4. We know what it's like, and just providing their physical needs, right? The food and shoes and clothes and all those things. And so, you multiply that times 100, and it's just a lot. And then, of course, second part of this is to provide them with a loving family environment. We're dealing with kids that many of them don't know what it means to have a mom that loves them and a dad that loves them. And many of them come from homes where they've never experienced that love and never even experienced a true, home the way you and I are trying to raise our children. And so that's a big part of what we do, is provide them with that loving family environment. And then an excellent education. We know that that's something that every child needs and deserves. And so we take education very serious. We have our own schools on our campuses. And then the fourth part of what we do, we're a faith-based nonprofit, is to point each child to a personal and genuine relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's really what it looks like now as far as on paper. But, if you were to come to our campus like you've been here, Doug, you see, we try to do it just like a normal family. So we have homes. They're not big dorms. They're cottages. We have a family that lives in the cottage with the children. And, what's their policies and procedures? It's just simply to be a family and to raise them the way that the way that we're trying to raise our family. And so, as executive director, my guide is always, hey, if my children are afforded this opportunity, or if this is the way I raise my children, this is how we want to do it in just exactly the same fashion. They shouldn't be disadvantaged in any way. And so, we have beautiful facilities, and we've been blessed, and we do that on purpose because we want each child to have that sense, that confidence, and just that sense of pride where they can go home and they've got their own bed, their own spot, their own room, in a beautiful home with loving parents that are in there for such a time as this, until they're able to get back with their family. So really, that's what it looks like on a daily basis here at Hope.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, again, what blew me away was even just the living, the homes that they live in, or the cottages, as you said, like world class. Like I walked in, I'm like, oh my gosh, this place is gorgeous. And you actually have staff that live there, like it's host families that literally live there 24 hours a day, just not, and a lot of them have children, if not all of them, but also house. How many kids, in addition to maybe however many are in their family, for your staff, can each family be responsible for?
Sure. There's up to 12 in each cottage. We generally keep it around, 9 to 10 is really the sweet spot. There's a lot of kids, but they're full-time professional parents, if you can say it that way.
Yeah. And how old are kids on average when they come to you? Is it all different ages, or is there a typical time?
Yeah, really, it's all different ages. So right now we have, our youngest is 1 year old. Castile, he came in when he was just a couple months old, and he's been with us. And then, we have all the way through seniors in high school. So this year we're graduating 3 seniors from our school.
Wow. And, I know the goal is family reunification. I work in a similar line of work, working with the homeless. We have a lot of moms and dads in our program with similar situations. I am curious, like, how often do you actually see the families reconcile with their kids versus you just basically have to raise the kids through 18 plus?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably, if I could say, half and half. We do work with the parents, and I would say it this way, Doug. It's, the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And so, and I know you experience that at Light of Life, and it's you provide as much resources and help as you can, but at the end of the day, it is up to the family to make those necessary changes. And so, but the success side of that is we do see every year, we see many of our families reunited back, and this is no different this year. At the end of this school year, we typically kind of go school year to school year just for the kids' sake, and we're reuniting several families here in just a few weeks that are going to be great success stories, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to this off the top of my head, but when families are reunited, do you do anything for the actual parents to equip them? Because oftentimes, if they were in the situation they were in, they weren't necessarily equipped to be great parents in the first place. Do you do anything for those parents?
Yeah, we do. And in fact, that's probably a little known part of our ministry is that we do provide help and assistance. A lot of
That's
times
awesome.
it's just in the way of helping them and counseling them. So, we deal with a lot of young parents and they just don't know any better. They weren't raised well. They didn't come from a functional family. And so just the basics of like, hey, you need a place to live, right? You need a job, you need a car, and just kind of helping them through what, if you were in the state system, they would call a case plan. And so we work with each family and just try to help meet those goals with them. And then, and there's many, many times I would say every year we are able to help parents financially, maybe purchase a car for them or whatever. If we know that it's a good investment and they're really making headway, then we invest wherever we can to make it successful.
Yeah, I'm curious what, at Light of Life, we always use a stat that at Light of Life, like that, in general, the average person by the time they reach 18 years old has experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. The average person who walks through our doors at Light of Life had 3 or 4 traumatic events by the time they're 18 and multiple thereafter. And I know trauma is a big word now. I'm just curious. I'm assuming, again, assumption, that a lot of these kids are coming to you with a lot of trauma in their background. And I guess, what have you seen the best ways for kids to heal from trauma and actually get out of that situation and circumstance that they were in?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. I would say a preface to that is, we are pretty careful on who we allow to come in to our home, because we do have little ones. Like I mentioned, a 1-year-old baby, we have a 4-year-old girl named Freya. We have a 5-year-old girl named Desi. And so, those that have suffered really traumatic things that they really need professional help, we help to find another place for them, a different facility that can provide them the need. But obviously, even just being separated from your parents, if you've never been through any kind of quote big trauma, that's just traumatic in and of itself. And so, I would say that, we do our best to provide them with a loving structure environment, and then, do what we can in the way of counseling. And we use outside counselors that just help to really help them through those trauma. But, what we've really found is in the type of traumas that we deal with, which isn't the high level stuff, just providing them with that sense of love, structure, where they know what to expect and they know, okay, I've got a place I'm going home to, I've got clothes and food and all of those basic things. Kids are very resilient,
Yes.
and they do well with that. So.
Yeah, and what I love so much about what you do is, I heard a stat that the number one way that kids get out of adverse circumstances is having someone show them another way. And, I always use the word community. Essentially, you're surrounding people with not only just another model of family, but you're surrounding them with a loving community of educators, of staff members, of team members who are going to show them an entirely different way of life than they could ever see before. And I just love that model. I'm curious, you've been doing this for years. Do you have a certain story or two that come to mind that you're like, wow, this young girl or boy came to us in this situation and here's what they're doing now? Like, I would love to hear a story of transformation.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me use one of our seniors who's graduating this year. His name's Greg, and Greg's been with us for probably 6 years. And so he and his sister actually came at the same time, and they came from, they have a mom that loves them, a dad that's been out of the picture since early on in their life. And so you have a single mom trying to raise them, and she just financially couldn't do it. And they were kind of staying with family. They ended up in a homeless shelter for a while, and she just never could get it together. And eventually they moved out of the homeless shelter and into the woods, and were living in the woods as a family in a tent. And Greg and his sister Olivia told me stories. They went to public school, and they would, at a particular corner, they would catch the bus and ride it to school. And when they would come home, they would get dropped off with a bunch of children at the corner, and they would just kind of hang out there and wait for all the kids to disperse, because no one at school knew they lived in the woods. And they would just wait for everyone to get out of eyesight, and they would just kind of go back into the woods. And so somehow they found out about Hope Children's Home, and we brought them in, and they're fantastic. So the older sister, Olivia, graduated from our school, and went off to college. And she's now just finished her junior year at college studying graphic arts. She comes back here for summer breaks and Christmas breaks. I mean, this is her home. We are her family.
Oh, that's cool.
And her brother's graduating this year, and he's heading off to our community college, and then he's going to transfer to our state college here, and wants to be a video game designer. And so he's in computer science. So, I mean, you look at that where these kids were just pushed from one place to another. They were good kids. They just needed a place where that someone could love them and someone could make a difference in them. And now we see that complete 360 in their life.
Man, that's so beautiful. And side note, just my natural connector. There's a guy in my neighborhood I'm friends with that works at a video design company and like gets to do all these cool 4D rides for Disney and things like that.
Oh,
so
wow.
If you ever want a connection or even someone to talk to in the space for him, please let me know. I'd be happy to connect them.
Okay, cool.
And talking a little bit, but you mentioned Olivia in college, junior year. Like, what is, we would call it aftercare at Light of Life. Like, but what do you try to stay connected with? All the kids once they're out of the home, or how do you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually one of our core values is family, and we say that not only the children that are in our care, but after they leave our care. And so we really do a great job. We just had one of our staff just arrived back this early morning and drove 10 hours one way to go to a child that was in our home last year to his high school graduation. Drove 10 hours to be there, turned right around and came back. And so we want to instill that we are their family. We're not trying to replace their family, but we're an addition to their family, and we'll always be there to help them, love them, support them, whether they're doing great or whether they're back on their face and they need assistance. We're there either way.
Wow. And how many kids again are with you right now?
Usually about 100 at any given time.
Ooh. Wow, that's amazing. And another ministry, and again, I don't know if you would say it's already created or where we are in the process, but that I'm fired up about is Bundles of Hope.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm excited about it too. Bundles of Hope is a new ministry initiative we're launching, and it really is for women that have found themselves in a crisis or an unplanned pregnancy. And specifically, they're looking for options of what to do. And we know that, statistically, there's many, many women each and every day that find themselves in that position. And so what we want to do is we want to get in that space specifically to help mothers and offer them another choice. And so a mother that is in a difficult or an unplanned pregnancy really has three choices right now. The mother can try to keep the baby and make it work. She can choose to adopt the baby. She can choose to abort the baby. But what we're finding is that those are really difficult decisions to make. And oftentimes with some of the legislation that's changed recently, those decisions are having to be made very, very quickly. And so what we want to do is offer mothers the gift of time and say, hey, here's a fourth choice. If you will just simply choose life and go ahead and have the baby, we'll take the baby even day one from the hospital if need be. Let us love the baby. Let us care for the baby as if he or she was our own, and give you time to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to be able to parent this child? Are you, do you want to create an adoption plan and find a forever home for this family? Whatever it is, but it gives mom time. And so, our plan is to be able to care for that baby for about a year. This isn't a forever arrangement, but just understanding that at the end of that year, you can either come and parent your child and we'll help you through that process, or we'll find a forever family. And we've already created an adoption agency where we'll find a family that would be willing to love and raise these children just as their own.
At Indosha, we help transform visions into results. What does that mean? We often work with companies who are doing amazing things that have incredible products and services, but fail to communicate what they do properly and market themselves effectively. We passionately serve entrepreneurs, business leaders, and visionaries to see what's in their heart and their visions for the future come to life. We do that by providing fractional marketing leadership and creative execution all in one. That's what we call VCMO. With VCMO, CMO, you get a marketing director and a team of creative professionals to help execute all of your marketing needs, all for one monthly cost. How do we do all this? We do it 3 ways. Number 1, we get your vision. We get excited about your mission and your trajectory as a company and come alongside to see you go further, faster. 2, we have a team of talented strategists and creatives to get all of the work done. And 3, we flat out work freaking hard for you and your company. Reach out today. Let's start a conversation.
That's unbelievable, and I love that fourth option, vision. I know, I'm a promoter, and I've already told everyone about this.
Yeah.
If a mother would choose that they want to give up their child for adoption, you mentioned you open an adoption agency, and let me know if you can't talk about this on podcast. But you have really unique circumstances on which people can and actually adopt through. Can you talk about that if you're able to,
Sure.
and where people can connect with you if they're interested?
Yeah. So, our vision with this is to find families that would align with us philosophy-wise and just style of parenting in their faith and those things, and be able to connect these families to these babies that need a forever home. And, Doug, I get the opportunity to speak in many different places, and I meet people really everywhere that are very interested in adoption. But I found one of the biggest barriers to that, unfortunately, is the financial aspect. And so, adoption, the average cost of adoption is $43,000 in the United States. And so I find families that either can't have children of their own or have had a few of their own children and just want to help out a baby, but they just don't have that kind of money sitting around. And so one thing that's revolutionary, and I still haven't figured out how we're going to do it, but we're going to do these adoptions at no cost to the adoptive family.
Come on.
And so this, to me, it's like, why should finances be a barrier to be able to connect a great family with a baby in need? Money shouldn't be the one to stand in the way. I don't think I'm the only one. So I do believe there'll be many donors that'll step up and just underwrite whatever hard costs that there are to have us to be able to make that connection.
That's amazing. Anything else? Because I want to transition in some leadership talk, but anything else you want to talk about Hope, and, just share with people where they can connect if they want to become a supporter and help you out.
Yeah. You can always go to our website. It's hopechildrenshome.org. We have everything laid out for bundles of hope there as well. That's a good way to connect with us. And of course we do, our team does a great job with newsletters and things, and you can sign up for those on our website. But yeah, we love connecting with people. We love being able, and specifically with the adoption thing, if there's any of the listeners out there that piques your interest, certainly reach out to us. And right now we're compiling names of people that are interested in adopting. And when we get to that point, which, Lord willing, we're going to be breaking ground the end of next month on building some houses that'll be just for these babies. In the near future, we'll be looking for families that want to help out.
Let's go. And I always, you've been hearing me say how world-class Matt and his team are. And I mean that. It's worth becoming a donor just for the experience of everything you receive as a donor. And not even from gifts, but literally. So I've worked at a nonprofit in development I've been there for 14 years. And literally I'll get stuff from Hope Children's Home, we have no clue what we're doing. These guys are the best. The gifts they send, the way they communicate, the stories, it is absolutely beautiful. So again, Laura and I are supporters. Really encourage you to get involved. Really, really special work there. And that. I didn't do this, and I'm going to change the subject. Thank you for all the compelling work that you do. Because we talked before we started recording about this, I have to call it out. I hate you for the shirt you're wearing. If you're listening to this on audio, yeah, I jumped on and first it said Dougie Fanboy Club. I'm like, this is good. And then I pop on and Matt is wearing a shirt with my head cut out on it, which is just
nice
ridiculous.
And big. Yeah.
Nice and yes, because I do have a large head. So
that's not what I was saying. I'm just saying it's there. I wanted people to know I'm a Doug Smith fan.
So I'll use this as an opportunity to say, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can head over there and see my giant face on Matt's shirt. And it'll probably totally distract you from all of the great work that he's actually doing. So anyway, I love you, brother. It was hilarious.
Too,
and again, just another example of world class. He literally took time to think through this and actually get the shirt. Hilarious. So I do want to talk. So we talked about all the great work you're doing, but I had a great mentor tell me once, nothing happens without prayer, money, and leadership. And you're leading this organization, but you haven't been leading it forever. You've been leading in it. But this past, I think around just over a year ago, about a year and a half, you took over as the successor for your dad, who is a legendary leader. Talk to me, like, what's it like sitting in the seat now that you're the CEO compared to other roles that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for sure. And, I worked for my dad for over 20 years. And so it's easy to be the second man down, and it's easier to, be the Monday morning quarterback. And one of the things I found is when you're sitting in that seat, it's like, oh, okay, everything, kind of rises and falls on me and what my decisions are. And so that's kind of been, I think, a little more eye-opening than I thought. And then I think just kind of the busyness of the schedule of, we're not a huge nonprofit, but, we have over 50 staff and 3 different campuses, international, and, it's a lot to juggle at times. And I think that, that maybe caught me off guard a little bit as well. But I'd say overall, I love it, man. I'm right where I know I need to be. And there's just something special about that. Even when the days may be long and the stress and all of that, maybe there's just something great about being able to put your head on your pillow and knowing you're right where you should be and doing right what you should be doing.
Yeah, the whole head on the pillow thing, I am curious, when I talk to leaders who step into leadership roles, they all say the same thing, like, man, you don't know the weight. And so as much as you think you do, or as much responsibility as you took in other roles, like, you don't know the weight of it until you sit there. Has there been a price you've had to pay that surprised you, or a weight that's pressured you that you didn't anticipate? Like, do you agree with that statement?
I do. Yeah. I think if you have the right philosophy of leadership, and, I think as leaders, we are there to lead our people and to lead them well. And when you really take to heart the responsibility that is, that you are ministering and being a servant to people in their lives. People have given up their lives to come here and to be a part of what we're doing. And, that to me holds a big weight. Not only the children that we serve, but the staff that serve them. And so as you lead from that servant perspective, really, I think that there's a lot of weight in that. And then also just the logistics of, if I'm not doing well, raising the money that we need to raise, then that's the livelihood of those that work for our staff at the home. And yeah, so I do think that there is a lot that weighs on you. And then big decisions as well. It's been many times where I've just woken up in the middle of the night and thought, what am I going to do? How's this going to work? And those are probably the uncounted costs that most people inside of organizations don't always experience or don't get to see. And so, just a shout out to the listeners here that maybe you're not the leader, maybe you're not the top, but that is something that the person at the top, they say it's lonely at the top sometimes. Support them, love them, encourage them. And, that goes a whole lot further than you think. It really just kind of helps to take the weight of some of the burden and responsibility away, to know that, hey, people are for me, and I may not be the best leader. I may not have all the answers, but we've got a team that we love each other. We support each other. And I think a lot of times people do that well within their teams, but maybe don't always communicate that up to the leader. And so that'd be my encouragement to the listeners.
Yeah, you talked a lot about, there's a lot of people listening to this, they're not in that seat, I had someone share a stat with me. I don't know if it's true. He said only 3% of people actually get into like executive roles. And I was like, wow, that's never thought about that, but it makes sense. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of aspiring young leaders who want to be in that seat. And, I always tell people this principle of like, you need to become the obvious choice. So when a new role, it may not be the head role, but when a role comes up, like, you want your name to come up first. You didn't become the successor and CEO of Hope Children's Home just because your dad was that. You had to have the goods. I'm curious, what advice would you have for young leaders when it comes to becoming the obvious choice? Like, what did you do to become the obvious choice to be the successor at Hope Children's Home?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, Doug, because obviously succeeding my dad, there could be a thought that, well, you got the position because of your last name, or you got, And so I think I had the disadvantage of that, but I think I would also call that an advantage, because it inspired me and motivated me to work twice as hard. And because I wanted to be exactly what you said. I wanted to be the unequivocal, first choice. Like, okay, it just makes a lot of sense. Not because of his last name, not because that he's been here for over 20 years, but because he has worked the hardest and is the most qualified. And I think, that was, not to digress into a different topic, but that was one of the things I was struggling with when my assistant gave me your podcast, and it really was weighing on my heart and mind, as we were starting to work toward that succession plan. It was right at the very beginning of that succession plan. And then I was going through some mental difficulties with this very thing, like, hey, maybe you are just getting this because your dad was the former director. Maybe you haven't really earned this. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. Those things were going through my mind. I'm thinking, I started to believe them for a while. And that's about exactly when your podcast came on, and some of those things you were expressing in a different way. And I probably interpreted them in the way that I needed to for me. But I think that also motivated me to do and be better and bigger.
Yeah. Do you talking about like, I don't want to say that was like imposter syndrome, but talk about like the mind games, like even in the role that you're in now, have there been times of like, am I really, because I think people think you eventually get to a point where like you're totally full of confidence. You're totally secure in who you are and the role you have. Like, has that been the case for you? And if not, how do you manage those mind games that you were talking about?
Yeah. So that's one of the things I think is a misnomer for leaders, is that they have it all together and that they're very confident. And maybe some of them are, but I'm thinking like me, you, just guys that are trying to do our best. I think that's something that we struggle with, and I certainly do in the back of my head. And you look at big successful guys, and I've had the privilege to be around successful leaders, and you start comparing them. You say, man, I'm not even half the leader of that person. Why am I leading an organization of 50 people and trying to raise this money and help these kids? And so I do believe it's something that more leaders struggle with, and they probably want to admit. But I think you have to just constantly remind yourself. For me, I lean heavily into my faith, and so I know that this is where God has put me, and who am I to doubt what God has done, right?
Come on.
If God put me here, then I'm the person for the job. I'm not the best leader. I'm not the most qualified, but for whatever reason, God put me here. And Amen. It's not really up to me to doubt that. So when I start having those thoughts of, well, he would be a better leader and I'm not half the leader that she is, or whatever, I have to recenter myself to say, but God didn't call them to Hope Children's Home, and God didn't call her to lead. He called you. So almost like step it up, bud. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and get the job done, because you have an enormous task to do each and every day.
Yeah, I mentioned several times throughout the podcast we have a similar hunger for personal growth and leadership, and you've been there for 20 years before you got the role. Like, that is a long time to be growing development. But you just mentioned, I've had the opportunity to be in front of, around some pretty high capacity leaders, and it's one thing I admire about you. Like, I feel like I get a text from you every other day. It's like, hey, I'm hanging out with Rick Warren. Hey, I'm hanging out with Craig Rochelle. Hey, okay, here's me and Karen Newhoff. I'm like, bro, I'll come work for you if I get this trap. Like,
that's funny.
But
you're making me sound cooler than I am.
Oh, you're cool. Yeah. But did Rick Warren get a shirt with his face on it when you met with him? Anyway. No.
Only you, Doug.
But honored.
Yeah.
Talk about putting yourself in rooms that are bigger than you with people that are bigger than you. Like, what impact has that practice made for you, and why do you continue to do it?
Sure. Yeah. I don't remember who said it. But they said if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I do try to put myself around people that I know that they're a better leader. I know that they're smarter than me. Doug, you are a great person for questions. Like I've been in a room with you around other leaders, and you are a great questioner, and you ask deep questions and thoughts. I aspire to be able to get to that point where I'm asking these great questions to leaders, but I'm not there yet. But I still want to be in their presence. I still want to be able to ask questions and rub shoulders and things like that. And so for me, one of the things recently I've leaned into is a mastermind group. And I know you promote those a lot on L3, and I think it's fantastic. Up until really your podcast, I didn't even really know I don't know if I've even heard of a mastermind group. I didn't know what that was. but just the concept. And we don't call ours a mastermind group, but it's the same thing where we can just get together. And dude, I'm telling you, man, I am by far the least smart person at that table. And I'm telling you, like, I was actually invited into this group, and it was such an honor to me to be sitting at this table. And I'm the only nonprofit in there. It's all these for-profit CEOs that run very successful businesses. One of the guys I sit next to, he's a CEO of a publicly traded company. They do $2 billion a year. He has thousands of employees. And I'm like, I don't belong at this table, right?
Wow,
I don't,
yeah.
but I spend one day a month with them, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we just talk and we share strategy. And in a nonprofit world, we're great at mission and vision and values and passion, not always good at the business side of things. And so this is where I'm like, hey, I got to lean into this and these guys. And so for me, it is just a matter of stretching myself, because I know that I'm not I know I have a ton to learn, and I want to constantly be learning. And I love it for me, but I think I shoulder the burden of, like, my staff depend on me to be the best leader. The children here at the home need me to be the best leader so that we can continue to help them and their families.
Yeah, and the groups that you're in are C12, which is a great organization. If you're listening to this, if you're an executive or have a key player on your team, really encourage you to check them out. If you're in the Pittsburgh area specifically, we're about to launch C12 Pittsburgh, which is really exciting. But they have them all over the U.S. and really all over the world.
Yeah.
But there's a cost to this, right? Like there was a meeting last night of interest group for C12, and I unfortunately couldn't be there. But I heard one guy was like, "I'm paying X for what?" Like, can you talk about the importance of actually investing in, hey, for high returns, you need high investment. Like, even though things have been expensive for you to be in those rooms, what's been the return on the investment you've made in yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think to me, it always goes back to the ROI, right? And so when I looked at this, and it is expensive every month, but the value that it brings to me, and, where I'm able to, two parts I think really value. One, we study, amongst other things, but we always study a business principle. And so, I'm taking these guys that are running, thousands of employees running huge corporations, and I'm like gleaning from them that I can apply it into my little nonprofit with 50 people, right? To me, it's just like an absolute no-brainer. And then the other side is we spend, about an hour just open talk. And so, even this last week when I met, I was like, guys, like, I'm in meetings all the time. Is this normal? And, I'm looking at these big CEOs, and they're like, well, how many meetings do you do? I'm like, well, 8 or 9 every day. And they're like, ridiculous. Stop right now. And they're like literally yelling at me, and you need to cancel half of your meetings immediately. And so, I mean, there's really you can't hardly put a dollar value on that. There's so much more return for what you're getting, and these guys will sharpen you. I saw one of those guys just yesterday at an event, and he came right up to me. He's like, what have you done to fix your scheduling problem? I'm like,
hey,
okay, yeah.
This is gold.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask, I was going to say what's been the greatest takeaway from it, but literally we use EOS here at Light of Life, and we've been IDSing, which is identifying, discussing, and solving issues. And one of the big issues is we have too many meetings. Yeah. And actually the same thing you're saying, I've been questioning, I'm like, using AI, I'm like, is it normal to have like a whole schedule full of meetings every week? Have you taken any steps, or did you get any advice that was transformational? Because I'm like, how do these huge corporations not, like, there has to be a solution to this. Please help me. Yeah. I'm sure people listening to this are saying, help us, Matt. Too many meetings.
No, so for me, it was one, I have too many direct reports. So I have
how many?
11 direct reports. So I need to cut that number down, and I know I need strategically to make another hire there, but that's not going to fix it in the immediate future. And so then they just started asking me, what's your meeting rhythm? And so I'd meet with every one of my direct reports, either weekly or biweekly. And they said, that's too much at your level. You're meeting with your leadership team, right? And I said, yeah. They said, well, they should be functioning a lot more independently. So cut that down to once a month on one-on-one meetings. So that's a little bit scary to me, because I like to build the relationship side of things. Yeah. And so that's one change. I already talked to my assistant. I'm going to implement starting in June. Yeah.
If I could pipe in on that, man, that's so good. And it's interesting that came from like such a high level leader. So I'm in my mastermind group, and one-on-ones came up at some point. Yeah. And my friend pulled me aside because I also do weekly one-on-ones. And again, I'm highly relational, want to stay in touch with everything that's going on. And he said, I think that's way more about your ego and pride than it is actually like. And clearly, I said, you have no idea what you're talking about until this moment. Anyway, but I think there's something there. When he said once a month, man. But inside the control freak side of me is like, once a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else?
Another thing, one of the CEOs said, he said, remember, Matt, you're the CEO. And so people need to come to your schedule. And that's one of the things I struggle with is like, I need to meet but let me do it on your time frame. He said, no, you know what, you need to call it as you need it, and they can switch their schedule around to make it adapt so that you're not spreading your meetings out and all of these type of things. And so that was a big deal. And then moving our leadership team meeting we meet weekly, and now we're going to meet bi-weekly. And so I was able to strategize all of this out, and I cut my meetings down over half for what's going to be the next couple of months as I trial this out. But, hey, we may talk 3 months from now, Doug, and I'll say none of it worked. But here's the thing, and I think it will. But here's the thing is you have people around you that challenge you. And maybe this isn't the solution, but I'll go back to them and say, hey, I tried this and I felt like this was kind of falling apart and this didn't mesh. And then they'll say, well, we'll do this, this, and this, and try that. So that's the importance, back to the main point of this, was like surrounding yourself by people that can sharpen you, that can hold you accountable. Even that friend that talked to you. I mean, that's probably hard to say. Hey, it's about your ego, buddy. Get off your high horse. That's not always a fun thing to say, but you need people around you that do that, and that keeps you sharp as a leader.
Yeah, and that leader that told me that also met once a month with his direct reports.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, you're lazy. You just don't want to. But
you know what I found when I was really going through my schedule was I have way too many one-off meetings. And so, it's not necessarily the one-on-ones and the leadership meetings. It's just this person wants to meet with me. And so I took last month and I had 21 one-off meetings. And I got to really ask myself, did I need to be that person? Did I need to be the person having the meeting? And right off the bat, without even hardly thinking twice, I scratched 8 off that I'm like, I shouldn't have met. So there's a bunch. That's a third, right? Of the meetings I shouldn't even have been in to begin with. And then the other ones I just went through and was like, you know what? I could have been in it, but I could have also delegated that one too. And so that's something I'm working through.
Does Robin, your assistant, run your full calendar?
She does, yeah.
Yeah,
so we'll blame it on her.
Yeah, that's right. Well, no, this is funny. Like, I had another mentor who was helping me through the same thing, and he had a great phrase. I think I shared it out through one day. He said, stop scheduling to your availability, schedule to your ability. Like, man, what's going to provide the greatest return? But he also said, never have more than 70% of your day scheduled. You need like that bandwidth, which is so funny. So like, I had my assistant put all this bandwidth time in, and again, like, she wants to kill me. I basically just filled it with meetings because I'm like, sure. And then she's like, stop. I'm trying to free you, and this is your fault anyway.
Robin says that same thing to me. She, so that's kind of the last thing I put in place was I'm going to go down to 3 hours of meetings. So per day. So 3 hours. So that'd be 3 meetings max. I typically already don't schedule meetings on Thursdays. That's been a long-standing thing for me, but I'm also going to make Tuesdays as well. So I'm going to go meetings only 3 days a week, and I'm going to do 3 meetings per day. So that's in 1 week what I've been doing in 1 day, 9 meetings. So TBD on how that works, Doug. I'll let you know.
Well, I'm definitely going to stay tuned because that is a high priority issue in our organization. Sure. I want to ask a few lightning round questions, but I think to wrap it up on the leadership end, a lot of times when I'm talking to leaders on the podcast about succession, it's talking about how they did it or what their succession plan is. I don't talk to a lot of people who've been the successor. What advice would you give from your standpoint on what went well in your succession and maybe some things that you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my dad and I started our succession planning in 2020, and we had kind of a 5-year road. And so The succession plan was supposed to be to take place at the end of this year, 2025. And so one of the things I think we all admitted that we did wrong was we had too long of a runway for that succession. We were looking too far into the future. Now, I think it's one thing to be planning toward that, but we were actively like trying to transition roles, and it got messy when neither of us intended it to be. And so that's when about 2023, my dad and I just sat down and he said, look, you've been here at this point, almost 20 years. You're more than capable. He said, let's just shorten this thing a couple years and make it happen now, so that there's clarity amongst the staff. There's not kind of two leaders kind of coming. And so that was one thing I think we course corrected. I think something that we did well was again, from your podcast, you introduced us to Lee Kreitcher. Yeah. And you had him on your podcast, and I texted you. I was like, dude, I need to talk to this guy. Like, we want to have some third-party help in going through this transition and just helping us to look for what are the red flags, what are things that we're missing, blind spots, how to communicate it to the staff, how to communicate it to our donor base. And so Lee coming in, and he flew down and spent a day with us. That was very helpful. But we came up with the written plan of like, hey, here's what we're going to do, and here's how it's going to look with timelines and agreements. Now, I think it was specifically important for us because it's family as well, and that can get messy quick. It can be the best thing ever, and it can be messy at the same time. And so we wanted to make sure we were very clear in both sides' expectations of what it would look like, and then just started executing on that plan. And I think overall it's went really well.
Yeah. I've loved watching it, and I've loved seeing you step into your role, man. I'm just so proud of you, and you're doing a phenomenal job. Thanks again for the work you do. We only have a few minutes left, so some lightning round questions that I try to ask at the end of every interview. The first one I've never asked before, but if you could wear a shirt with your favorite leader's face on it,
it would be Doug Smith. Yes.
You're so funny. But for real, best advice you've ever received, and who gave it to you?
Oh man, that's a big one, Doug. I think there's probably multiple advices along the way. Kind of, I've had great parenting advice. I've had great leadership advice. But I think if I had to boil it all the way back to something, and sounds a little bit predictable, but when I was probably 17, my parents sat me down, and specifically my dad, but they were both there, and told me that they wanted me to go to this particular Christian college. And if I would go for 1 year, that they would pay for it. And what I did after that, was up to me. And so I agreed to that. And they just, they said, we think this is the best route for you. And then looking back, obviously I went to college, and that's where I met my wife. And then you start looking at that, and it's like, now we have 4 children, and we've been in ministry for 20 years together. And so, I think maybe just listening to the advice that my parents gave me on a direction when you're 17 or 18, you don't know anything, right? So I was just taking advice and saying, okay, this is what they say. And I look back, and it was pretty pivotal, because I could have went somewhere else. I would have never met Mandy. I wouldn't have the kids I have today. And you just start looking into those things. So maybe not the advice it was very specific to me, but that's probably very pivotal as well.
Yeah. You mentioned parenting advice, which I have to ask. I'm in the midst of 5 kids. Best parenting advice you've ever received? Oh man,
it clearly is this. It is your kids grow up fast, and so take advantage of every moment that you can. And I have 2 children through adoption. So one, my older 2 are 28 and 26, and we got them when they were 7 and 9. And it blows my mind that they're 28 and 26. Our 26-year-old son just got married like 2 weeks ago. And so this time next year, Doug, I might be a grandpa. So I probably will have my grandkids' face on the shirt from then on.
That's right. Rightfully so.
But they do grow up so fast, Doug. So I would say, I know you've got a house full of little ones, and it just probably seems more like logistics as much as anything. Of like, okay, I got to get them here into bed and before the call, you told me that you were on daddy duty for a while while Laura was out traveling. He's like, well, they all stayed alive. So some days you just feel like that, like that's the threshold, right? So,
that's right.
But take every moment in and every opportunity you can. That was big for me.
Biggest leadership pet peeve?
I don't know that I have a pet peeve. I would say I can tell you what I admire the most in leaders is humility. And, and that's one of the things, when you get in a room with the leader and you know pretty quick if they're humble. And so I guess by kind of the inverse of that is when you get in a room with a leader that isn't humble. And, that's, I guess, strikes me as a pretty poor characteristic.
So good. Now, if you ever get time to get to know Matt, you have to listen to his stories. He has crazy adventures that he goes on. He's crazy. I'll just say that. But I love asking people, like, what's something you've experienced in your life that you think everyone should experience before they die?
Yeah, I would say wilderness backpacking. So I think if you've never climbed a mountain for 10 days with your food in your backpack and your tent and all of that, I think you're missing out, I would say, for sure. Specifically out in Yosemite area or California, it's great.
10 days in a mountain, and don't fall off the cliff with your brother in a what were you in
like a side-by-side ATV, yeah. That was Colorado.
You're crazy. You're crazy. If you could go back and have coffee with yourself at any age and you would have actually listened to that Matt, what would you tell him?
Yeah. Probably right out of college, maybe 22 years old. And I probably would tell myself to seek wisdom more, pray for wisdom. And again, if you're listening and you're a person of faith, you read in the Bible that God promises to give you wisdom if you just simply ask for it. And maybe there's theologians out there that know deeper, but that in my recollection is the only promise that, we can ask for finances, we can ask for health, but we're never promised those things. But God says, if you ask for wisdom, I promise to give you wisdom. And so I would tell myself to ask for wisdom from God.
Yeah, and you must have, because you're one of the wisest friends that I have. So really appreciate that. Yeah, last question, then I'll just leave it open-ended after that. But at the end of the day, at the end of your life, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, I think I would say, the Apostle Paul in the Bible wrote some of the last recorded words that he wrote in 2 Timothy was, I fought a good fight, I finished my course, I've kept the faith. And, there's going to be times in life where we have to fight through some things. There's a course that God has specifically given you, Doug, he's given me. And I just want to finish strong. I want it to be said of me 50 years from now or whatever. He fought a good fight and he kept the faith and he finished his course. And so I think that's what I want my kids and grandkids to look at me and say.
Anything else you want to leave leaders with today?
No, I just appreciate you letting me be here, Doug. It's an honor. And, as you always say, the leaders out there, keep doing what we're doing. Sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, but we're there for a purpose and just keep doing what we're doing.
Great. And if you want to connect with Matt, I'll include links to ways to connect with him and everything going on at Hope Children's Home in the show notes, and make sure you check them out. And if you're ever in the Tampa area, again, really encourage you to check them out. You can go take a tour and actually see for yourself the colleges and the families in the school, and you'll just be blown away. So thanks again for all the great work you're doing, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Well, leader, thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Matt. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. You can find ways to connect with him and link up with Hope Children's Home in the show notes below. Again, incredible organization. Laura and I support them and have been for a few years now, and we really hope that you'll link up with the great work that they do. I also want to thank our sponsor, Andosha Marketing Solutions. They are an incredible organization that wants to help you with your organization's marketing. If you have any marketing needs at all, I cannot recommend them enough. I know a lot of their clients, and they are beyond thrilled with the work that they do. You can learn more about Andosha at andosha.com. That's ANDOCIA.com. And leaders, I like to end every episode with a quote, and I'll quote Anthony Gaudi, who said this. He was talking about a church that he built. He said, "It is not a disappointment that I will not be able to finish the temple. I will grow old, but others will come after me. They will make it even more grandiose." And I was just really challenged by that leadership mindset of just knowing that, hey, one day this work that I'm doing is going to be complete, but if I do it right, I can hand it off to the next generation and they'll do an even better job with it. And that's what kingdom work is all about. So I hope that inspires you. As leader, as I say in every episode, remember, don't quit. Keep leading. The world desperately needs your leadership. We'll talk to you next episode.